Focus on Aging Adults is sponsored in part by AARP.
Our story begins more than 60 years ago inside an abandoned chicken coop where our founder discovered a retired teacher living, no home, no health care. So she said no to this injustice and yes to transforming lives. It's this drive, this compassion that inspired AARP. Today, we empower people to choose how they live as they age. We advocate for health and financial security. We strengthen communities everywhere. We are AARP Pennsylvania, creating real possibilities.
Pennsylvania has one of the largest aging populations in the country. Our aging adults are vibrant, active contributors to our society. PCN, in partnership with AARP, present Focus on Aging Adults.
Welcome to Focus on Aging Adults. I'm Larry Casper. This program is brought to you in partnership between PCN and the AARP of Pennsylvania. Today we'll discuss a wide range of issues facing older adults. Our guests are Representative Patty Kim, Majority Chair of the House Aging and Older Adults Services Committee, Roy Offlerbach from the Offlerbach Group, and Bill Johnston Walsh, State Director of the AARP of Pennsylvania. Bill, let's get right into it. More grandparents are becoming primary caregivers for children. Why is this happening?
Well, I just think that over the years, for the last decade or so, more and more grandparents have been thrown into the position of having to take care on a day-to-day basis their grandchildren. We know in Pennsylvania, there's roughly about a little less than 70,000 grandparents that are raising their grandchildren right now. That includes, something like 260-some thousand grandchildren that have been being raised by some type of family member other than their biological parents. There's several factors. One, obviously things happen to the parents. They get in trouble for one thing or another, whether it be that drugs or alcohol or pieces like that. Parents are young, not being able to take care of their children, and so they have to pull in their grandparents to be able to do that. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that the education is out there. We're letting people know that there are other people besides biological parents that are raising their grandchildren, raising their children, whether it be a grandparent, an uncle, an aunt, cousins. They could be even neighbors helping out, to make sure that the children are getting to school, getting the food, nutrition that they need, making sure that they're studying, making sure that they have the clothes, that they're taking the role that a parent would take.
Mm-hmm. When did our society notice this was becoming a trend? Is it safe to call it that?
It's definitely a trend, and it's something where I call these grandparents who become the primary caregivers as the silent heroes. Something tragic happened in their lives. They're not going to go out there and hold a rally. Something terrible happened to me. I don't have the funds to do this, but because of my deep love for my grandchildren, I'm going to just step in and make it work. And so there was a group who's doing a lot of this work and a lot of fundraising called Grand Stepping Up, and they're located in Delaware County. They knew that I was chair of Aging and Older Adult Services, and they came to my office and really spoke very eloquently about the issues that they're dealing with. And it is hard to hear. Not only are they stepping up, but the child has, some kind of trauma, mental health issues. The grandparents have mental health issues. It's a huge transition from I'm done with work, I'm, going to kind of just go on cruise control, and then their lives are completely disrupted. And one of the issues that they kept talking about is that we are on a fixed income. Mm-hmm. We cannot help support and give the grandkids what they need and sometimes want, especially Christmas. So I came up with a bill called, it's numbered House Bill 1688, and what it would do, would add to an already existing line item that would put in resources, money, where the AAAs, the Area Agency on Aging, would be able to apply for grants from the state depending on the needs. Let's not just throw it out there. The AAAs are on the ground. They know what the grandparents' needs are. They understand what's going on in their communities. They asked for the appropriate amount of money and give it to the grandparents for mostly short-term emergency needs. You know, we're not saying, you know, we're getting bicycles for everyone. This is something that the
Some
grandparents
needs are greater than others.
Absolutely, and they can decipher and discern what is needed and to disperse that out. So I love the AAAs. Some are doing great jobs and they're on the ground again, and have that money go through them instead of that big, a big Department of Human Services or even the Department of Aging. I think this will be a key to help with some of the short-term needs of these families.
Well, and some of the needs are things that you wouldn't even think about normally. Diapers for the child, a crib to have the child sleep in, because some of these kids that are coming to their grandparents are so young that they really do need these kinds of things. I think it's also important to notice that this is not a problem unique to Pennsylvania. It is nationally a problem. And in fact, right now, Congress is being asked, if they ever get back in session, is being asked to, in fact, amend the tax laws so that the child tax credit can apply to individuals who are on Social Security. Presently, it doesn't, but we know that there's at least 3 million families, grandparents across the state, or across the country, that are in fact caring for their grandchildren, and their only source of income is Social Security. That's it. So they can't qualify for the child tax credit because they don't have earned income. They have retirement income on Social Security. That's just not right. If they're caring for the young children, they should be able to qualify for the tax credit as well, which in their case, since they don't have earned income, would in fact be a small amount of money coming back to them to help cover some of these kinds of things that Representative Kim is trying to do here at the state level. So it is a national problem, not just a Pennsylvania problem.
And I think one other piece on that, and I agree wholeheartedly with Chairwoman Kim, is that these grandparents are heroes, because what they're doing is they're stepping up. Instead of the child going into a foster system, they're stepping up and they're doing this, and they're not getting the dollars that go along with it because they're not officially part of the foster care system. So I think bills that AARP 1688, which AARP supports wholeheartedly, which the Chairwoman is putting forward, is just, something that is needed to be done to make sure that those extra dollars, so that everything doesn't come out on those grandparents that most likely, for the most part, are on a fixed income. They're not working anymore. They only have so many dollars coming in, and now they have more individuals that they're taking care of instead of just them or them and their spouse.
And Larry, this issue is a bipartisan issue. I've had some colleagues on the other side where, embarrassing, we've never spoken before, but came up to me and said, I know of a grandparent doing that, and I appreciate you bringing up that bill. So I believe we have bipartisan support for this. Finding the money to fund this is always the issue. And as Bill said, we're saving money on the foster care system. The kids want to stay with families. We think this is a good solution. And I don't want to sound doom and gloom, but it's going to get worse. This issue is going to get worse, and we need to get ahead of it and have the resources there.
Well, we also have access to the lottery program for these types of programs as well, because after all, that is dedicated to seniors, and with a small amount going to individuals with disabilities, but predominantly seniors. And this is clearly, Representative Kim's bill is clearly a bill aimed to assist not just the children, but also the seniors, the older adults who are involved in this type of care. So there's resources available. We just simply have to convince enough legislators and the administration to be able to say, yes, this is a priority.
And before we go any farther, Representative Kim, give us some closure on your bill. In other words, what's the latest activity in the legislature addressing your bill?
So right now we are looking for sponsors for the bill. We want to get equal number of Republicans and Democrats to really show the strength of it.
It sounds like you're in the early stages.
Very early stages, but we like to. Thank you for allowing us to be here to talk about it, raise the issue, and get support. So it's early stages, but we're very confident.
Now, when parents give up the role of raising their kids, just how do grandparents at large feel about having to step up at this stage in their life? It's got to be tough.
No question, it's tough. I'm a grandparent myself, and I have helped my daughters out, not because I have to care for the children specifically, but with different things that they may need. And I just can't imagine how a grandparent, especially those that are surviving on only Social Security,
limited income, maybe disabled.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. So it's extremely difficult, yet they want to do it because they have the love for the grandchildren, and they want to give those grandchildren some aspect in life rather than having to go into foster care. So do they step forward? Yeah, absolutely. Do all of them step forward? No, because some of them just can't. But those that can, my experience has been that they're willing to do so, and they do
Yeah, it's interesting too that at AARP we hear stories all the time from our members. We have 1.8 million members across the Commonwealth, and we have quite a few grandparents raising grandchildren, and they tell us the story of how, in a sense, they were thrown into this because of what situation.
It came up suddenly. They didn't expect it. It must have been a shock.
They thought they were going to be, going into retirement, travel. They thought they were going to be
kind of on cruise control.
Yeah,
and then this big disruption.
Exactly. Now there's a schedule again. Making sure the kids get to school, making sure that there's food on the table at dinner time. So a lot of these things. So yes, it's disruptive, but as both Representative Kim and Roy have said, is that the bottom line here is they do it out of love. It's pure love that for their grandchildren and for their children to make sure that the grandchildren are getting what they need.
And my colleagues have noticed that this is an issue and want to help as well. So there are a couple of bills out there that would, there's a tuition grant system for kids who are in the foster system. They change it to kids in kinship care so that they're able to have some of the tuition assistance as well. And then legal assistance for custody, whatever, legal custody issues that they can be helpful to. So we have some bills out there helping. And then, my kids are late teens right now. And, just even looking at the strollers today, they look like spaceships. Like, I have no idea what they are. And,
And the cost of them.
And the cost.
The cost and the Star Wars-like design.
who are dealing aerodynamics. Like, it's just it's unrecognizable, but looks really great. So seniors are dealing with new technology, and then they have to deal with all this. Like, I'm out of touch with all this stuff for the babies. So if we could just come around and support. It's free, help Bill with his grant,
Exactly.
It takes a team effort, a community, and I think that would really help bond us and be helpful to these families.
So it sounds like there's other legislation out there besides your bill, of course.
Yep. Representative Eddie Pashinsky, Steve Samuelson, who pushed the property tax rent rebate, for those people who are who make $45,000 or less can get significantly more money back from the gaming grants. So we're trying to be thoughtful. And if I could just thank Roy and Bill and Teresa Osborne, I'm new to this. I've been chair for just several months, and honestly, Larry, I didn't want this chairmanship. In our society, we see aging, and we're like, not yet. I don't want to. But once I got in, I love this committee. And
Is that right? Very interesting. You didn't want the position at first.
Education.
They offered it to you, and you said, "I got to think about it."
I said, "I'll take it. I'll take it." And once I'm in, this issue is bipartisan. Everyone on my committee, Republicans, Democrats, we all want to be helpful, and then want to give these guys credit. The services that are already in place, the groundwork and infrastructure is so thoughtful and comprehensive. So thoughtful with the AAAs and all the work that they do to give the services for our seniors is very, very impressive. And it took a long time to get there. Do we need to do more? Absolutely. But this state cares for our seniors. It's very obvious. And I want to be helpful in trying to, create that master plan. We're going to talk about that later. But I'm so happy to be on this committee, and just to also, to fight ageism. This is a diverse population. You can have a 6-year-old who is completely vulnerable, or you can have a 90-year-old who could beat me in a marathon because you're in such great shape, So we have a diverse group, but, we have to be creative and try to find a way that we can help and support this population.
Expand on ageism for a minute, and what's out there that your committee would like to remedy?
Right. So I was at an event.
Forms of discrimination, for example.
Yes. That term boomer that the young people use.
Yeah.
It's a derogatory, you old person,
Indeed.
old man.
Right.
And it's offensive. And we need to stop that because, again, this population is very diverse. Look at our president. Like, we have people who are succeeding in their age, in their older age. And I went to an event that was hosted by Leading Age PA, and they hosted an art show of seniors creating these beautiful art pieces as almost a showcase of, look what we can do. We are creative. We're, doing well. And that's just one little example of how we can push on the ageism, is to showcase the great things that they're doing. And they're not all in wheelchairs, with hearing aids and bent over in a nursing home. Let's stop that and let's celebrate them and what they can offer to our communities.
And I think on top of that as well, at AARP, we hear all the time about job discrimination. People that want to continue in the workforce, but they're of a retirement age, whatever that is these days, and they're, in a sense, they're kind of either being pushed out, or they're not being given even though they have the experience, they know what they're doing, and we're seeing that over and over again, not just in Pennsylvania but across the country. I think the other thing too is with us. Another piece is volunteering. If you look at who the volunteers are out there, it is those individuals over the age of 60 that are out there. I can tell you, we could not do the work that we do at AARP, the education, advocacy, and outreach, without our volunteers. We have about 400 active volunteers that work with us on a day-to-day basis, and we have thousands more that work with us on more advocacy-related work.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that too often when we talk about older adults, we talk about those who truly need help, those who are vulnerable in one way or another. And truth of the matter is, that's the smaller part of the population of the older adults. As Bill and as Representative Kim had indicated, there's a number of older adults out there that are still quite healthy, still quite willing to volunteer. I have helped with the intergenerational idea of having those seniors who attend senior centers, community senior centers in Pennsylvania, work with those daycare programs, where the daycare programs take the little kids out on a field trip, so to speak. They come out to the senior center, they intermingle with one another. The kids love it. Those older adults who are attending the centers love it. And in fact, many of them then also volunteer to go back out to the daycare centers and what have you. So there's a lot of activity. I can tell you, I grasped a hold of this some years ago when I started the Offlerbach Group. The Offlerbach Group is not a typical normal business. But all the people that have worked with me have been retirees. They're just not ready to fully retire. They don't want to work full time and punch a clock anymore, but they want to do something, and they want to do something worthwhile. So those are the people that the Offlerbach Group hires. So we don't only actually hire them, we're all consultants. And we just shift around as to where help is needed.
I have a quick funny story. I have two 70-year-olds in my district office, and one gentleman came in on his first day. When he was putting everything in his desk, he brought in the phone book, like the big phone book, and we're like, "Oh, Mr. Oscar, we don't use phone books anymore." But he has progressed so quickly. Now he Googles for names and numbers. But
that is funny. The sight of the phone book is kind of a quaint thing now, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
But I just
Where did he get it?
I was going to say, I didn't know they were around anymore.
What is that thing? And why does it have so many pages? There are no pictures.
But I just want to say that the older folks who are in my office are the ones who are consistently on time, the most professional.
Good work ethic then, right?
And who knows how to use a phone.
Yes.
A lot of young people are so intimidated about a landline, and that's all we have in our district office. So
the landline, or the fact that they have to actually talk to somebody? No, I'm not trying to make a joke either.
A little bit of both.
Okay.
A little bit of both. Yeah. So I'm really happy with my older workers in my office. Yeah.
Well, let's talk.
Hard to text on a landline.
Let's get into something we've alluded to a couple times, and that has to do with the governor's so-called master plan for older adults. Now, before we get into any details there or the goals, just how vocal has this governor been so far as the issues that affect aging adults?
Extremely vocal.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
More than his predecessor, who was also a Democrat?
More than any governor. I've served down here since 1970. More than any governor prior to that. This is the first governor that we have heard actually address aging issues in his commencement address. Inaugural address, I should say, same thing, in his inaugural address, and specifically call out the good work that a number of organizations, including area agencies on aging, are doing, how much support he would have for the Department of Aging, which was critical, because you may recall just about 5 years ago, the then administration wanted to do away with the Department of Aging, and just disband it and take all of its functions and blend them into other existing departments. And fortunately, the legislature, Representative Kim and others who were in the legislature at the time, opposed that. and they opposed it, as she has indicated many times, on a bipartisan basis, completely on a bipartisan basis, with more than enough signatures to override any effort the governor might try to do in order to dismember the department. Now, in fairness to the governor, it wasn't all his idea. It was from some of his cabinet officials, and that was unfortunate because it created a big hubbub that didn't have to be created. Long and the short of it is we still have the department.
So the cabinet came to him?
Yes, yes. And the long and the short of it is that we still have the department. This governor sees the value of it clearly, in part because he was a county commissioner in one of our largest counties and accustomed to working with the area agencies on aging and with the Department of Aging. And so he chose, in my estimation, an extraordinarily good candidate to lead it as the secretary. Again, an on-the-grounds, frontline individual who was a director of the Area Agency on Aging in Lackawanna County, someone who understands the issues, knows what's going on. So, yeah, the commitment, to answer your question in that long-winded diatribe, is that this governor has a commitment to aging issues.
Yeah. So, Bill, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah.
Are you as enthusiastic about the governor's Roy's?
Yes, I'm enthusiastic about all our elected officials. I think that the legislature and the governor have been doing a great job when it comes to older Pennsylvanians. This master plan on aging piece, the governor, when he was a candidate, last year. It was last year. He basically, we went at AARP, we went and talked to him. We talked to him about what other states were doing, like California, like New York, doing this master plan on aging, making the state an age-friendly state. Those were key things to us. He got it right away. It was something he was thinking about, as Roy said, and he asked a lot of questions. And almost on day one, when he did get his current Secretary of Aging in there, they started talking about this. He signed the master plan on aging executive order, and we just have been moving straight away. It's on a tight time frame, and I know this, is. Is
that right? There's a timetable for accomplishing these things?
There
Next
is.
year.
Yeah, it's
By
by December he would like a report in his hands from the group of the master plan group and recommendations. He's talking about, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's talking about putting some of these ideas into, and now it's a 10-year plan, but it's going to be in increments. And in the first year, the 24-25 budget, he's looking at taking some of these recommendations and putting them into his budget.
Yeah.
And a report including some of these goals is due in December.
Yes, and so I'm so glad, Bill, I didn't know that you guys brought the idea to the governor, but California has done this. I've been working on this for years, and they were pretty much emulating their plan. They would do a listening tour all over the state, Commonwealth, and then pick out some of the big themes and goals and then put it together in a living document.
Big state, a lot of real estate.
Yeah, and if you're curious, some of their goals, it's 45 pages, it's online, but one of them is housing for all stages and ages and creating new housing options to age well, ensure access to services and the needs that they need to live at home. Another one is supporting more caregiving jobs, and then one of the other ones is economic sufficiency, as Social Security has not, gone up with the rising costs. So those are their examples. Right now, Department of Aging, specifically Kevin Hancock in that department, is conducting listening tours all over the Commonwealth, and we'll pick and hear from everybody. You can submit it if you don't want to be there. You can submit it online. Anything. Leave a voice message. They want to hear from everybody.
Is the listening tour in progress right now?
It is. It is.
How many stops have they made?
Well, the last count I had, and the area agencies on aging have been charged with orchestrating these, and the senior centers are being used for the most part to be the focal points for them. The last count I had was well above 136 different listening sessions so far. And they're slowly drawing to a conclusion now because they're hearing much the same thing over and over at this point.
That sounds like a lot. 136? I thought you were going to say a dozen.
No. The governor's charge was to go to every county.
Yeah.
What do you know?
So they did make that at all 67 counties. They also are doing a survey that they're asking people for their input. They have well over 5,000 surveys back in with people across the Commonwealth. And it's all ages, because again, this is a master plan on aging, but everyone's going to be
Everybody's allowed to
so anybody
have some input.
18 and plus and older, please have some say in this, because it's important that, and this is just for the first 10 years. And I'm hoping we're going to have another master plan at the end of that 10 years to see how things have worked, what have we done, and what do we need to do for the following 10 years.
And with this plan, it doesn't matter who's governor, who's in the majority, who's in the minority. We can have a plan that we can be laser focused on with, whatever administration and move forward. I don't, just in case if the next governor comes in, this is not a priority, we're not going to just throw it out. This is in progress. It's a living document, and we're going to push forward on 5, 6, I don't know how many goals they're going to come out with, but really important to all come together on the same page and move forward. Yeah. Really important.
Well, tell me some more about Pennsylvania being inspired by the state of California. It just strikes me as maybe unusual that these two states would get together. And California being clear on the other side of the country, and they're at least twice as big or 3 times as big. What do we have in common with that state that we can learn from the lessons they have, or the plans more precisely for their older adults?
Sure. Well, there's a number of things in common. I think also the fact that California was either the first or second state to do this. And to get it right, the first bill, and to get it right and have it actually work, laid out a nice template for this state to follow. But
a lot of aging Californians out there, Roy?
Oh, that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, one of the things we clearly have in common is the size of the aging population. Now, geographically, California is much larger than Pennsylvania, but in terms of the aging population, California is not all a bunch of young people running around in the sun. There is a significant aging population out there as well as there is in Pennsylvania.
I have to admit, I think of those beach movies from the 1960s. I got to get over that. There's older people out there too, not just Frankie Avalon and Ned Funicello on beach ball.
So that was one of the things. The other thing is that by and large you have a strong governor legislative process in California, as we do in Pennsylvania. So in terms of being able to do things by executive order and then bringing in the legislature for those things that may need to be changed in statute, the two states are very similar. Again, much larger in California, but nevertheless, the processes are very similar.
I think there's 2 other pieces to that as well, is with regards to California also has a lot of rural areas as well as a lot of urban areas. And we have the same. We have our urban centers that have different needs than our rural areas. So we're looking at that. I just think that, looking at California as the first, New York is now going through their plan. They're a little bit ahead of us in Pennsylvania. They've started the process, so they're probably going into their second year where we're still on our first year in the master plan, but we can get some learnings from New York as well. And I think there's something like 10 other states, if I'm not mistaken, that are somewhere in this process, way beginning. We're like the third in the country that have really starting this process and really getting it. And it's because of the governor, it's because of the legislature, Representative Kim, and the work that she's doing that's really pushing this forward.
So when all this input is ultimately made about what our plan should be in Pennsylvania, now, Roy, you pointed out 136 hearings have already taken place, so you said that there's already some repetition emerging, so we can learn from that repetition. So what are those big issues that are just floating right to the top?
Well, interesting, Larry, and Bill and I were talking about this before the program started. AARP put out a Livable Communities Principles sheet, and interestingly enough, among the top issues we've heard are the very same first 3 that they have on that sheet. So I don't know if that was premonition or if AARP had already been surveying the Commonwealth, but the number 1 issue has been transportation. Hands down, number 1 issue, transportation. Second issue, housing. Hands down again, housing. And then the third issue is sort of combined on the AARP thing. It's equitable access and also to ensure quality and choice. They're pretty much one and the same. Access must have quality, and you must have choice, or it's not really access.
Access and choice to what, Roy?
Access for a number of things. Access for housing, clearly at the top, but also access for services that may be needed, like home care, for example, or adult day services. There is at least 14 or 15 counties in Pennsylvania that don't have an adult day service center. So there's no access there at all. And even if there would be, it might be one center and many miles in between. So these kinds of things are coming to the fore that the older adults are concerned about. But it's not just access in the rural areas. It's also access in the urban areas. Access to food, access to a grocery. I'm sure you've heard, as many of us have, about the food deserts that occur in our urban areas where you have blocks, including right over here in Harrisburg.
That's a phrase I became familiar with, I think, in the last just year or so.
Yes.
Food desert.
Food desert, yeah. Right over here in Harrisburg. We have blocks, square blocks, where there is no grocery store, where people have to find some way of getting to wherever the nearest grocery is. So these are the kinds of issues.
And that's where transportation comes in.
Absolutely, yeah. That comes in both the urban areas and the rural areas.
I think the other issue is that we're focused a lot on like statewide. We're focused on the executive orders that the governor can make changes in this master plan, or the state legislature.
Right.
But we also have to remember that a lot of these changes have to come at the local level with mayors, city councils, county commissioners, county execs, county councils. They're the ones dealing with the transportation issues at the local level. They're the ones, with routes and with SEPTA and different pieces like that. They're dealing with housing. Can we have different types of housing in different areas of the Commonwealth? Again, it's all local level. Can we build an in-law suite, or a house where you can build something where the younger people can move in, and you can have a parent move into the another section of the house, or a back house on the lot itself. Those are the kind of and the same thing, with regards to open spaces. A lot of that has to deal with parks and different
That sounds
pieces.
like quality of life to me.
Yes.
Another important concern.
Exactly. So again, it's important that it's being done at the state level with the governor and with the legislature. But I just want to emphasize that we have to make sure that the local politicians are also on board, and they get their input in this as well, because they're going to have to make a lot of these changes as we move forward.
Yeah, try to expand on that, Representative Kim. When you're making legislation, you have to take in consideration these local people.
Oh, absolutely. And we need to hear from them, and again, this master plan is really amplifying these voices that may not feel like they have a voice. My bill to help grandparents raising their grandchildren is because people came up and talked to me. Legislators, I know people don't think we're very smart, but we don't automatically know all the issues. We have to hear it from people, and like the patterns that they're hearing from these listening tours, that's how I picked up, Patty, this might be an issue that we need to address. So talk to us.
We can help you focus.
Exactly. Talk to us. And so I really think, though, that technology is inhibiting. I'm going back to Roy and talking about the transportation and the food deserts. I mean, most grocery stores deliver their foods to your doorstep, so I'm not sure why that can't be a solution.
Exactly.
Certainly that's more popular since the pandemic.
That's exactly right. Yeah, well, the pandemic got that rolling, and I think you're absolutely right. That can be part of the solution.
And then not everybody's, comfortable with Uber and Lyft, but that's transportation. Do we have senior discounts for Uber and Lyft? I mean, these folks need to get out. The worst thing for them is also isolation, and we want to make sure that they're able to go out and feel independent. So I just think this master plan will be very helpful to bring all the great minds together to figure out ways for our seniors to live longer and healthier.
Yeah, there's no question about the isolation being a critical issue. The Committee on Medicare and Medicaid in Washington has now finally recognized that what they call these social determinants of health have a direct impact upon individuals' health, and therefore the cost of Medicare and Medicaid. And what they're now doing is suggesting that there should be ways that we can address these kinds of things, and isolation is the number one issue at the very top for the social determinants of health, because it leads to depression, it leads to individuals not taking their medication properly, and all those kinds of things that follow afterwards for ill health. So, yeah, no question about that.
And places that congregate can be part of the solution here, obviously.
Absolutely, yeah. Congregates meals at senior centers actually started out in the 1960s as an idea because they discovered, they who were the people traveling the country at that time, that there were many malnourished seniors that just didn't have sufficient nourishment, not even sufficient food, let alone nourishing food. So the whole idea behind the Older Americans Act was to set up congregate meal programs so that individuals of older age could be guaranteed at least one hot meal a day. And there, of course, after that, the Older Americans Act became more and more involved with other programs as well, which many of our seniors in Pennsylvania depend upon. Again, they're funneled through the area agencies on aging, which essentially is all these programs in the AAAs are funded by either the state lottery or the Older Americans Act. There's a few dollars that come in transportation funding as well, but for the most part, it's those two sources.
Let's take a break from the issues just for a minute, because I want to explore your respective backgrounds. And Bill, let's start with you and tell us what's the latest at AARP. Sorry, AARP of Pennsylvania.
AARP of Pennsylvania, that's fine. I'm used to people saying AARP. So
do they still do it?
They still do it. It's not a problem. It's not a problem at all. Well, thank you for that. At AARP, as I mentioned, we have 1.8 million members across the Commonwealth. And so we're a 50-plus organization where we really focus in on the needs of the 50-plus and their families, working very closely with my counterparts here, with Representative Kim and with Roy. So we do, on the issues that we work on, are advocacy, education, and outreach. So on the advocacy side, everything that we're talking about here, we're making sure that the voices of the 1.8 million members and their families are in everything that we're talking about here, whether it be the master plan, whether it be workforce shortage, senior hunger. We just want to make sure if there's any legislation or any executive orders that are going to be put out there, that we want to make sure that they're the right ones and that we can really help. And after saying that, then there's the education piece. The property tax and rent rebate program that Representative Kim was alluding to is really going to go into full force in the new year. And we've been out there with the governor, with the legislature, really promoting this, letting people know.
This is an expansion. More people will be able to collect this relief.
That is correct, yeah. And so we're out there doing that. So we do education on that front. We do a lot of scams and fraud education out there. We have a great group of volunteers and staff that really know scams and frauds that permeate the Commonwealth. We talk about them, educate people on that. We talk about caregiving, how important caregiving is for individuals. We talk about utilities and keeping the cost of utilities down, on the education piece. And then the outreach, we're also an organization that likes fun. So we do a lot of tours of museums, for our members. We do a lot of pieces. So fun with purpose, we like to call that, and so we do Longwood Gardens, or we do botanical pieces. We do the different museums. So it's a lot, but we enjoy it. And we're really looking out for the older Pennsylvania in the Commonwealth.
Representative Kim, I'm still interested in how you explain to us that the chairmanship of the committee you're on kind of found you, and you weren't initially into it, but the more you explored it, the better it sounded to you. And after all, you can get bipartisan support on a lot of aging issues, and that's got to add some element of power steering, I would think, to legislation.
Yes, I would like to make a confession to Bill, because I turned 50 over the summer and I got an AARP envelope, and the first thing I did was,
no, that's all right.
Why are you sending it to me so early? What is your problem? Isn't it 50?
No, it's
I thought it was
50 plus. It's 50.
Oh, I thought it was 55 too. I got one too, but I don't honestly know if it was 50 or 55.
Did you open the envelope?
I wasn't real pleased when I saw it. Apologies, but
as you can hear, we do so much
it's more
for
of a
you.
reflection on me than AARP. You know that, Bill.
And when I turned 50, I was annoyed that they didn't send me one.
That's funny. Roy, while you have the floor, tell me more about this Offlerbach group and how you're advocating for older adults.
Well, much as Representative Kim, I stumbled into the advocacy for older adults. That was not on my card. I started out, as you know, Larry, in the legislature back in 1970 as a senior staff aide, and then I served a few terms in the House and a few terms in the Senate. And then I theoretically retired and started the Offlerbach group, and within a short time, many of my friends back home convinced me to run for mayor of Allentown, so I put the business on the shelf and said, okay, we'll do that, but one term only, one term and out. And at the end of that term, we brought the Offlerbach group back off the shelf. And what we discovered was that there were a number of individuals out there, older adults, who had reached retirement age. They retired from their profession, whatever it was, but they weren't ready to stop doing things and doing things of value. So I was able to talk to a half a dozen or so of them and said, how would you like to do just a little bit of part-time work? Using your skills and expertise for clients that I may come upon that need some help, short-term, no long-term commitments, that sort of thing. So that's how the whole thing really got started. I stumbled into the aging part of it because some of those very same friends came to me and said, would you consider representing the Association of Senior Centers in Pennsylvania? We really need some help. We're just not able to move somewhere. That was 2008. So I started with the Pennsylvania Association of Senior Centers. Didn't take me long to figure out that the aging network was somewhat in disarray in terms of not being able to fully cooperate with one another. Each of them was doing their own thing in their own way and doing it well, but they could do so much more if they were willing to cooperate with one another. So to the Senior Center group, we next added the Pennsylvania Adult Day Services Association. And then we next added Meals on Wheels of Pennsylvania. And then we started working with an 11-county consortium in the West called the Southwestern Pennsylvania Partnership for Aging. And about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, we've added the Pennsylvania Association of Area Agencies on Aging. So I now have this network, or this coalition, if you will, of all these entities throughout the Commonwealth that are now working together. supporting one another when we need support. I just simply put out an email or a call or something to them and say, look, we need support on this piece of legislation, or to contact the administration, or let me have your ideas on this, that sort of thing. It's in its infancy because they're still getting accustomed to all working together, but they are doing it and doing it well, and I'm just delighted with it. I was in a perfect position to do it. I had reached retirement age myself. I needed something to do, and I could help these smaller nonprofits that really couldn't afford to go out and hire a major lobbying firm.
Now, we've talked about Governor Shapiro's so-called master plan for aging, and we know that a report is due this December, which is going to distill a lot of these ideas that have been collected at these hearings as to what should be in the plan exactly. Now, let me talk about a fellow named Ray Landis. He's appeared on this show on behalf of AARP on a few occasions. Here's something he says about the governor's master plan. He says it glosses over the fact that there's already a plan in place. So that begs the question, is the governor's master plan superfluous or redundant? Anyone willing to entertain that?
Yeah, I will, especially since Ray Landis did work for us before he retired. Ray's a great guy, but he's wrong. He's wrong on this one. The bottom line is that there is a plan that the federal government asked the Department of Aging to basically on a 4 or 5 year cycle come up with an aging plan for the Department of Aging. This master plan is the first time that we're looking outside of just the Department of Aging, taking in all the other departments, pulling in the legislature, asking people from 67 counties what they feel is needed to make sure that they have a good life as we move forward in the next 10 years. Are the programs up to speed? Do we have enough money? What are some new thoughts out there? That has never been done before. So this governor and this legislature took it to say, you know what, we're going to start thinking about the future. We have more and more people that are aging in place. Will we have the programs? Will we have the resources? Will we have the staff to be able to take care of these individuals in the way that they should be taken care of?
And aging in place can bring on its own challenges too, as far as isolation is concerned, right?
Absolutely.
That is correct.
And in terms of having the proper services that can actually work with people in their home and community area as opposed to having to go to an institution.
Yeah.
I have a bill, we're looking at a bill that it will allow nursing students to get their CNAs for certified nursing assistants while in school. And senior living centers have a lot of CNAs. They use a lot of CNAs, so we can expose nursing students into these centers. Like me, before becoming the chair, I'm now visiting, and I always leave feeling better about myself because the residents are so warm and lovely people who listen and share wisdom. Like, it's out of sight, out of mind. If you don't have an older relative, you're not going to these places. But if we can get young people to see the environment and how warm and lovely it is, maybe when they become a nurse, that they'll go back and serve the older population, and that's what we need.
You need that contact to bring you through the door.
Exactly.
Yes.
People are afraid of nursing centers, or they don't, whatever. People are sick, whatever. But they're nice places to go to, and I just wish we could have more people exposed to that.
Sure. Yeah. And it helps to be able to expose children much younger than even nursing students. If I can tell you a quick personal story, I cared for my mother for the better part of 27 years until it reached the point where she needed personal type of care that she would have felt awkward if I were trying to do, and frankly, I couldn't do anyway. But as I was looking for an assisted living facility for her, and already signed one up, my youngest daughter volunteered and said, how about if we take Grandma to home and we care for her? Would you agree with that? Now, she has 3 little girls, and at this time, the little girls were 9, 7, and 4.
Your daughter had 3 little girls.
Yeah, 3 little girls, 9, 7, and 4. And a couple of dogs as well. All right.
Additional responsibility.
So
I hear
a lot
you.
of responsibility. So I said, well, you can give it a try. I said, we're going to keep the assisted living place in place, in case it doesn't work out. But if you're willing to do it, you can give it a try. It was the best thing that could have happened. All 3 of those little girls helped with care of Grandma. And the 2 dogs, for that matter. We gave.
Don't forget those dogs. Well, seriously, that's a spectacular, inspirational thing.
We gave Grandma.
And the idea originated with your daughter, no less.
Yes.
About your mom.
Yes, exactly. And we gave Grandma one of those old-fashioned register bells that you'd have at a hospital or at a hotel, where you ding.
Sure, ding.
So we gave that to her. So whenever she needed help, she'd just ding the bell. Not only did the 3 girls come running, but so did the dogs. And as a result of that, they still talk about the fact that they helped care for grandma. This was
that
only
right?
a couple of years ago, so it's been recent. But they still talk about that fact, and they were now, looking forward to the idea of helping out some other older adults.
Well, you know, that
because they had so
shapes-
much fun doing it.
Yeah, I think the other piece, that's a great story, Roy. But I really do agree with Representative Kim in the sense that there's a continuum of care that we need out there. And nursing facilities, assisted living facilities, skilled care, personal care homes, and home health care is huge. We hear survey after survey from our members that they want to stay in their homes as long as possible, and that's great. And we fight for those individuals to be able to do that with these programs that we're all talking about. But there is a need for nursing facilities. There is a need for assisted living and personal care homes as well within that spectrum.
I'm seeing a trend post-pandemic where we have millennials who are probably still carrying college loans. Housing prices are high, so they work with their parents and live together. How many cultures and generations have we had where we had multiple generations in one
Under
house?
the same roof.
Under the same roof. So the grandparents who are not that old yet are taking care of the grandchildren, and as they age, the children can be taking care of the grandparents in the same house. How beautiful would that be? It's not for everyone. People are spread out, but one unique thing about Pennsylvania, if you grow up here and leave for another job, you usually come back because you realize, whether it be the Four Seasons, the affordability here, people come back to Pennsylvania. And if we could have homes that are conducive to parent living, I think that could help with all of the problems we have with the nursing homes and lack of beds and lack of direct care workers.
Adopting the ideas of other cultures and bringing in more generations under the same
where we
roof and
help each
accepting
other.
that.
Absolutely.
And hopefully those will be recommendations in our master plan.
Right.
So.
That can go on the list for the master plan
There you
anyway.
go.
In the event it's not on there.
And a lot of that goes back to the discussion earlier about bringing in the local officials to these discussions, because we have several spots in the state right now where the AAAs are sponsoring the idea of a small, tiny house coming in to be placed directly behind the house that the family's living in. That tiny house will be movable, and it's only a temporary, so that the grandma, grandpa, whoever it is, might be able to live there right next door, so that they have help immediately available, yet they're still independent on their own. The biggest...
You have four walls that are your own, and you're only a few feet away from help.
Right, and the biggest bridge to cross is getting the local officials on board because of zoning issues. But those that have come on board have found that, this isn't a bad deal.
Oh, that's right. So it's difficult to get a tiny house and plop it in somebody's backyard? Never occurred to me.
Absolutely.
That's why I was saying that it's the local issues that through this master plan, we have to make sure the local elected officials are on board with this, because a lot of these changes that we're talking about around housing specifically are going to be made at the local level.
Yeah, the easiest part was finding sponsors to help build these things and make it one of these little programs that we can take a look at as a potential model. The toughest part was getting local officials to go along with their zoning issues and allow us to put this tiny house next to the existing large house.
Let's go back to the governor's master plan for aging adults and consider transportation. And Roy, you said they had the 136 hearings and they've collected a lot of ideas. We talked about housing somewhat. Is there some specific issue about transportation that recurred in these hearings? I mean, is it as simple as more transportation, a certain kind of transportation, assessing older drivers in a different way, perhaps?
It's a mix. It's a mix of everything, because many of the older adults who need this type of transportation need it in part because they have some disability, whatever it may be. They may not be able to see well, they may not be able to walk well, they certainly can't drive well, even if they could afford to have an automobile. So you really need to have drivers that are sensitive to the fact that some of these folks may need assistance getting in and out of the van or in and out of the bus or even in and out of the car, whatever it is. There are transportation companies with which the Department of Human Services contracts, and when they suddenly have a shortage for some reason, they've started going to Uber or Lyft, which is not desirable at all, because these Uber and Lyft drivers have no training whatsoever in how to provide this type of transportation to take people to adult day centers where this individual needs a certain type of special one-on-one care.
Certain level of care is necessary.
Exactly, yeah.
And the average driver isn't ready to provide
That's exactly right. So it's part of the same issue where we have not enough people willing to do the job that are necessary, not enough funding to have the number of vans that are out there and can be done. One of the other big issues that people have complained about, even where these things exist, is that having them on time tends to be a problem. You might have an individual sitting at their pickup spot for as long as an hour and two.
When you need a ride, you got to be on time.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Especially,
the transporter has to be on time.
especially if it's a doctor's appointment.
Of course.
You know, you want to make sure that you're there on time. And you know, to add to what Roy was just saying too is, we've been to a few of these listening sessions, and some in the rural areas, and the issue of transportation and about obviously the timing issue, but also, you know, in a rural area, it may take you an hour or 45 minutes. To get to the appointment or where you need to go, so you have to add that all in. So we're looking at transportation that could take half a day for someone. Compared, you're not going just down the block, or you're not just going, you know, within there, 10 minutes away. So that's all things that you really, as Roy was saying, looking at the dollars, looking at the workforce. You know, do we have these individuals, and we have to make it easier for our consumers to be able to do that. And as Representative Kim was saying, you know, maybe we should be looking at Uber and Lyft. I love that idea, and I hope that's part of this. I hope someone has said that.
Roy just shot it down.
I'm not shooting it down.
Only because
I'm
they're
not.
untrained at the
Roy,
moment.
maybe. I'm not. I think it's a great idea, and I love the discount piece of it. So,
See? I'm sticking with Bill. You shut it down.
Now, Representative Kim, I'm sure you can give us some insight on the current budget situation. Of course, if you could try to summarize what's going on there as best you can. We've had legislative leaders come in here sometimes, and I got to confess, sometimes we don't completely understand what they're telling us, and as far as having the instructions for spending the budget money, and now we're told a lot of important money is flowing. Do you tend to agree with that?
So yeah, we have a huge gap in agreement with the federal dollars that we received during the pandemic. I mean, we have billions of dollars in reserve. I can't say all Republicans, but Republicans say that there are some structural deficits within our budget, maybe about a couple of $1 billion every year. So why don't we...
That means it's a problem that recurs from year to year. That's a structural budget problem.
Yes, thank you, Larry. And so we need to kind of save it and use it for the years coming ahead. Democrats, I believe we have issues that have been ongoing. We have a large aging population. We have needs for our public school education. Buildings are deteriorating. They're not healthy for our kids. On and on and on. I get it. We do not want to spend money on higher salaries because, you know, we can't keep up. But if we can put some money in the infrastructure, whether it be physically or figuratively, things put in place for investments for the long term. I think we're not in trouble, but we have a lot of needs that if we don't address them, they're just going to get worse and more expensive. So we have two differing ideas on how to use this money, and what do we see? We tried to work it out, and then now we're stalling, and now we're just sitting here waiting for the other person to bend.
And then perhaps more to the point, what about the immediate need of aging adults? The whole point of our show here today is that that money flowing as far as you can tell, and you have a lot of experience. How many years did you spend in the legislature, House and Senate?
House and Senate, 12 years as senior staff, 12 years as a senator, 4 years as a House member. And now I'm still traipsing the halls.
Did you ever see a budget impasse situation while you were there?
Oh, several. The infamous 1977 budget situation was terrible. We didn't resolve the whole thing until the end of December. But at that time, we passed stopgap appropriations, which they no longer do. And at that time, there were also, everything came to a halt. Now, because of court decisions and federal mandates, there are some services that are still funded. Medicare, Medicaid, for example, can be funded. And that's an issue we're going to be taking up as well. In fact, I have an appointment very soon with the state treasurer to get their take on this whole idea of funding essential services during a budget shutdown. Because to this point, the only thing that the state has been willing to fund have been the federally mandated or the court mandated, i.e. state employees get paid if they show up for work, that's court mandated. Medicaid, Medicare is federally mandated. There's some nutrition for children, that's federally mandated. That's
so what's being neglected then, Roy?
What's being neglected are things that directly impact older adults, older adult protective services, nutrition for older adults. All of those things are frozen because budget has not been passed necessarily. So we need to get a handle on that and make sure we have defined as essential services those things that also include those services for older adults, like the two I've just mentioned. Older adult, how can anybody argue that older adult protective services is not a necessary or essential function? But up to this point, we haven't been able to get that done. So that's one of the things that has to be done. The other thing is that we have our lottery fund dedicated to older adults. It's run off budget, so to speak. It's never been part of the general fund budget since the lottery came into being, which goes back into the 1970s as well.
That sounds stable.
It's very stable. There are some threats to it. This whole idea of what is called skill games, which are really lottery machines, one-armed bandits, some people call them, although they use push buttons now. There is some competition there. They're running, most people think, illegally, but no one's been able to prosecute them. So we have to get a handle on these skill games. If we do that, and we take the revenue that's been proposed to tax them and put it directly into the lottery fund, then we have a fully stabilized lottery fund for older adult programs, which we can move forward with.
We have just a few minutes left in our show, and Bill, I want to try to give you the last word, and in other words, try to
exactly.
Try to review the importance of again the governor's master plan, he's calling it, and all these exciting ideas that are being input into the system, and the report is due in December, and then hopefully some will be realized, become reality next year, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I can. The work that the governor and his administration, the legislature, other organizations have been doing a great job of really getting as much input as possible from every single corner of the Commonwealth. And I think that is just key. We want to hear from everyone about what it means to them to have an aging system that's going to work for them and their families as we move forward over the next 10 years. And I think that we've been doing that, but more coming in more. I know that we did talk to Kevin Hancock and to the secretary, and they're even though I think it's the end of this month or the middle of this month that they're going to stop with the survey or finish up a lot of these listening sessions, they're still taking information in. They've started the process of working through them, coming up with some recommendations. They're going to have an open period where people can comment. A comment period on what comes out before they finalize it and bring it to the governor in December. So there's a lot going on there. But again, I can't thank Representative Kim and the work that she's doing in the legislature with her colleagues in a very bipartisan way, which I think is excellent. That's how we get things moving here. And then Roy and who he represents are real partners with AARP to make sure that we get what we need.
Our guests have been Representative Patty Kim, Majority Chair of the House Aging and Older Adult Services Committee, Roy Offlerbach from the Offlerbach Group, and Bill Johnston Walsh, State Director of the AARP of Pennsylvania. Thanks, everyone. That's it for Focus on Aging Adults. I'm Larry Casper. Thanks for watching.
Our story begins more than 60 years ago inside an abandoned chicken coop where our founder discovered a retired teacher living, no home, no health care. So she said no to this injustice and yes to transforming lives. It's this drive, this compassion that inspired AARP. Today, we empower people to choose how they live as they age. We advocate for health and financial security. We strengthen communities everywhere. We are AARP Pennsylvania, creating real possibilities.
Focus on Aging Adults is sponsored in part by AARP.